Welcome to Legal Innovation Spotlight, the podcast that brings you the latest advancements in legal tech and knowledge management. I'm Ted Theodoropoulos, and I connect with the industry's brightest minds to provide you with valuable insights and actionable takeaways. So sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Richard Tromans, how are you this afternoon, your time?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. Very good. Yeah, very good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So I think everybody knows you. You've been on the podcast before, but just 30-second intro for those that are familiar.
Yeah, sure. So I spent 25 years or more working in the legal market. I've worked as a journalist, market analyst, management consultant, strategy consultant, innovation consultant. I started writing about AI in 2015, and I started Artificial Lawyer in 2016 during that first wave. And I also chair and have helped create several conferences called Legal Innovators. And yeah, it's a good time to be in legal tech.
It is. It's I think there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but I'm having a blast, covering the space and our time. We started the podcast shortly after ChatGPT came out 3.5, and our timing was good. They wasn't related. We were so InfoDash is an intranet extranet company, and we focus exclusively on law firms, and we sell primarily to KM and innovation teams. And when innovation first came out in legal, which was about 10 years ago, I did a study, looked at the ILTA roster. In 2014, there were 16 people on the ILTA roster that had innovation in their title. Today, there's close to 400. In the beginning, I'm of the opinion that innovation was KM rebranded, but just over the last few years, I'm seeing a shift, and there is real efforts and resources being put towards innovation. I had Michelle DeFestano from University of Miami on a few episodes ago, and she wrote a paper in 2019 about the CINO role, Chief Innovation Officer, and the paper was titled "The CINO Role: Roles, Holes, and Goals." And she interviewed probably every CINO there was at the time, and she did a really good job documenting like what their priorities are. And there was a admission on the part of CINOs that a lot of it was marketing. It was focused around, we want to look innovative. That is now shifting, and so we're well positioned.
We hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing real.
No, I agree.
It
is real.
Yeah,
it's always good to be a bit cynical. About all press releases, frankly. But yeah. No, it is. I think there's more happening for real now than for a long time.
Yeah. And your timing with Legal Innovators, the conference, is outstanding as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the conference, what its focus is, and then we'll dive in a little deeper.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. It's funny you should ask that question. But thank you. I appreciate it. So basically, Legal Innovators is a series of events that we do in California. There's one coming up 11th and 12th of June in San Francisco, and there's another one coming in November in New York, which is just launching. It'll be the first time we've done that, and then again we're going to be back in London earlier in November as well. So three Legal Innovators events, and basically the idea is that Legal Innovators grew out of the ethos of Artificial Lawyer. So it's all about the cutting edge. It's about exploration. I'm interested in the unknown. I'm interested in people who are standing at the edge, people who are taking risks, people who are exploring, people who are doing things that are going to be significant and will actually change or potentially change. Maybe it won't be for 10 years down the line, but at least people are starting on that journey and they're kind of mindful of it. That's fundamentally what Artificial Lawyer is all about. I got onto this train because I thought we're going to see really rapid evolution, right? Not a revolution. Perhaps in the long term, looking back, we'll say it's a revolution. The same way that we look back and say, wow, we had an industrial revolution. I'm sure at the beginning of the industrial revolution, they weren't jumping up and down in, 1780 and saying, "Hey, this is a revolution, guys." They probably weren't saying that. They weren't even saying evolution, because the word evolution hadn't even really been coined at that point, right? Darwin is a bit later. So you often don't realize how significant the times you're living through actually are. But I think we have to kind of focus on that bit. That's what I'm interested in. I mean, there's lots of legal tech conferences and they're all really good. They do all different kinds of things. But what I'm interested in is bringing the leading companies, the leading thinkers, the leading lawyers, the leading legal tech experts, and those companies, and bring it all together and really get together and have a high level discussion and share and show, think about what's happening now and think about where we're heading. And for me, that's it. I mean, everything else is, well, like I say, there's a lot of great events out there, but I'm not really interested in the rest of it. I mean, I didn't start Artificial Lawyer to basically just be a PR machine for a new feature. Like Blah Company has got a new button that is pink now rather than blue. I mean, really, who cares? If it doesn't ultimately systemically change things, and it doesn't matter really in the long run, it's just decoration, right? It's like that Monty Python sketch about people, about waking up in the morning and finding that something that you left on your bedside table has been moved an inch to the left. I mean, it just doesn't really matter that much. So that's where I'm focused. And Legal Innovators California is exciting because we've got those incredible companies that have come out of Palo Alto and places like that, around, the Bay Area. So, we've got the Googles and the Metas and the Ubers and companies like that. Hopefully we'll be getting a Y Combinator come along too. We've got investors coming along. We've got companies like Legora, Harvey, and a whole bunch of really pioneering companies. And then we've got people like David Wang and Danielle Beneke who are giving keynotes. And we've got people from like Cooley and all the, Wilson Sonsini, la, 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 la. In short, it's an incredible bunch of people and it's going to have that West Coast vibe, right? And then in November, we'll be over on the East Coast in New York, where it's going to be kind of different. But I think New York is changing. Things are changing there. I mean, for a long time, I'll be honest, there's no point lying about it, I was a bit despondent about New York. I would see some of these great firms full of really smart people, and like the genuine interest in innovation was pretty low, I thought, until fairly recently. And now people are really doing stuff. A lot of big firms are doing stuff. And it's really heartening. And you're like, this is a good time to launch Legal Innovators, because Legal Innovators can only exist in markets where people are really doing stuff with real purpose, right? It couldn't exist in a market where people just want to talk about the latest KM feature, right? It's just not gonna fly. Well, what are we even going to talk about, right? There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
So that's basically, and I think it kicked off in London, not just because that's where we're based, but I think some of the leading UK firms for a long time were ahead of some of the US firms because it's a much smaller market and you've got a much smaller number of large law firms, and those large law firms are really very competitive with each other. And then also you've got the Big Four. Now the Big Four isn't really stealing a lot of work. It really isn't, despite what you might think. It's not from those law firms, but it really keeps everyone on their toes. It really, really keeps people on their toes. And like kind of everyone knows each other, like the US market is vast. You got New York, you got Chicago, DC, you got Florida, you got Texas, you got California. I mean, in the UK, like 80% of the top tier commercial legal market is concentrated literally in the square mile of London. So it's very intense, very competitive. And I think that drives a lot of innovation. So anyway, that's it. That's it. That's my 2-minute blurb. I mean, I think if people are interested in that kind of energy, that kind of vibe, then come along to Legal Innovators.
And then who is this goes beyond law firms. This is inside counsel. And you've got investors, what any other contingents?
Yeah, I mean, academics. I mean, we did. We every now and then, for example, we've got Megan Ma, the well-known, legal tech expert from Stanford. She's going to be one of our speakers. It's going to be great to have her there. We've had other speakers from academia in the past. We'll have investors there. So basically, we have day one law firms, and day two is in-house. Because even though there's a lot of overlap, there are some distinctive things. So, like contract management tools Okay, do law firms use contract management tools? Yeah, to some degree, but for in-house legal teams, it's a whole thing in itself, right? It's a very, very special thing. Certain tools like e-discovery, there aren't that many in-house legal teams that spend a lot of time on e-discovery. They may be on the fringes of managing those projects, but they're not going to be, not many in-house legal teams will be running e-discovery themselves. That would be it's fairly rare, I would have thought. M&A due diligence, well, there aren't that many in-house teams that run such projects themselves either. So there is a distinct difference. And I think, but by bringing everyone together, it's very interesting, and you'll get a lot of crossover of people and speakers and companies, and also particularly now with this what I call the AI Gen AI convergence, right? Because Gen AI is so spreadable. It's like butter on a hot day, right? You can spread it over everything. It's incredibly versatile. That a lot of the companies who are taking part in the events are selling both to the in-house and to the law firms. In the old days, it was like pick a side. You want to sell to law firms or you want to sell in-house, and never the twain shall meet, right? Now, people are selling to both simultaneously and, with intent.
Yeah. You mentioned the big four, and I actually I agree with you that the UK was first with the Legal Services Act that's been around now for I think close to a decade, maybe
Yep.
longer, and it hasn't been a big dial mover in the UK in terms of market share. I do, and you and I talked a little bit about this the last time. I do think we're entering a different era where the capabilities of the big four and the nature of legal production have now shifted in close alignment, right? So the big four are massive relative to any law firm. KPMG is the smallest at 40 billion, which is five and a half times Kirkland and Ellis, which is an outlier in and of itself, world's biggest law firm by revenue. And that's the smallest of the big four. Deloitte's at 85 billion. So if you add up, if you add up the revenues of the big four, you're at about 220 billion. If you add up the revenues of the AmLaw 100, you're at about 140 billion. So in terms of scale, you've got four companies that have significantly more revenue than the top 100 lawyers. And not that revenue is a differentiator in and of itself, but it's a proxy for resources, right? KPMG has 275,000 employees. They've got a global, they call it the Ignition Center in Denver, where they fly clients in and bring in tax, audit, and advisory resources to help solve problems in a creative space and creative ways. You don't see that from law firms very often. There actually are a few. Faegre Drinker has a Ignition Center like space. I forget where it's at, but it's rare. So I really feel like this push, and we haven't had the ability for non-lawyer ownership in the US until recently, and that's only in 2 states. So I do feel like the momentum this time could look different than when the Legal Services Act came about. Do you agree with that or no?
Well, I mean, as I've written countless times in Artificial Lawyer, it doesn't matter who owns what, or who does what to whom. It doesn't matter at all. The only thing that really matters is, do you actually change how you work, right? Do you change the means of legal production, right? So like, I own a shoe factory, you own a shoe factory. My shoe factory is run by robots, or it's operated by robots and 5 staff, right? And an incredible amount of AI and data management. And I've got the best workflow consultants on the planet helping me. And you run, the normal way. And that changes everything, right? I'm a private equity fund, and you're a family, multi-generational family business, right? It doesn't make any difference who owns these shoe companies. Who cares, right? It makes no difference. The only thing that matters is the way that you actually produce, right? How the means of production alters. And this is the thing that we saw. I mean, I've met, someone I actually know pretty well, partner level people at some of the big four who've worked in the legal sector, in the legal division of the big four, and they worked pretty much how they did when they were inside the Magic Circle, which is the large law firms in the UK. Nothing really changed. They were just like a miniature city law firm inside the Big Four. Does the Big Four have incredible resources? So could a partner who's in the legal division suddenly ring up someone in the finance group or the tax group and say, hey, my client needs some help with this, this, and this, and this? And yeah, of course, that helps. And do the Big Four work pretty good at cross-selling? They do. But I think one of the great myths about the Big Four is that they're really technologically advanced, or that they're any more technologically advanced than anybody else, and they're not. There are boutique law firms, probably in London, who are way more technologically advanced, right, than any of the Big Four, because they're totally committed to working in a new way.
That's interesting. Yeah, I actually see it a little differently. I think the ownership model matters, and here's why. First, it opens up all new sources of capital, and which didn't exist prior. It also creates scenarios where you can offer stock options to highly sought after executives, and they can have an ownership stake in the business. And when you start having external capital flow into an industry, it changes how that industry operates. There will be boards of non-lawyers who hold management accountable in ways that today doesn't happen in the US, right? The ownership is exclusively lawyers, and it limits there's a little bit of an echo chamber in legal that I think you're going to get. Like I get emails from VCs all day long, in their pitch, if they don't have a legal resume, which most don't, because VCs weren't very interested in legal till about 2 years ago. But their pitch is, we have a whole, and this is the PE playbook too. We have a whole bullpen full of operators that can help you with HR, finance, operations, sales and marketing, and they will be at your disposal if we are investors in your company. And think about those functions and how they operate in law firms today. It's fairly immature.
But there's been several, multiple law firms in the UK that have sold out, and several that have listed on the stock market. They have almost all been complete failures.
Not done well.
And some of them have actually gone bust.
Yeah.
Some have just delisted, because I think I'm not poo-pooing the whole thing, but I think we're coming at it the wrong way. I think trying to get a law firm that's operated as a law firm for 100 years, and its clients, which it's had for decades and decades, that current generation of clients, to just suddenly switch and start operating as a sort of super powered, sort of law firm on corporate steroids. I'm not sure that's ever going to work. The UK experience shows it's a complete failure, pretty much. It hasn't worked. I think coming at it a different way, and this is ironic because I'm going to mention Atrium, which actually was also a failure. It's interesting, when people try and reinvent the law firm model, it usually messes up badly. But I think maybe we just need to keep trying, the same way that people kept on trying to fly, and then it kept flying into the ground. But if you started from scratch, I think there is hope. And this is one of the interesting things. People say that Atrium failed, and a lot because of the technology. The technology was rubbish, blah, blah, blah. And lots of people, particularly the more cynical types, laughed at the whole thing, how dare a non-lawyer try and do this? The reason why, with my theory anyway, that the technology at that point in the market cycle was irrelevant anyway. Even law firms that were using tons of technology, the technology was having almost zero impact on the actual ability of them to succeed or not. It was legal tech is still largely irrelevant, right? Even now, at that point, it was almost completely irrelevant. What reason why Atrium failed is because you got a bunch of lawyers out of large law firms who had very sticky relationships with all the big funds and all the big corporates, right? And you suddenly assume that all the client goodwill was just going to move over to this new business. That's why it failed. It's basic human reasons, right? Why does one lawyer, why does the in-house lawyer at Sequoia, gigantic fund with billions to invest, go to Wilson Sonsini or Cooley or Latham Watkins or Gunderson? Why? Because they know these people. They probably live on the same street, right? They go to the same parties. The kids know each other. They trust each other. They respect each other. They went to Stanford together, right? They see each other's work. They see each other's work products every single week, right? There's a bond there. They trust each other. And then some of the more junior people disappear, walk off to this other law firm. It's run by a guy who set up a gaming video website, throw in some small amounts of technology, but he's neither going to change things one way or the other, and go, hey, why hasn't it worked? Well, of course it didn't work, because you can't rip out all that client goodwill. It's not as simple as that. However, that said, I think if they had another bash at it and they were more careful, and they didn't go for the big sell that tech is going to solve all the problems. I mean, if they just do really low value stuff, like this thing that's happened in the UK that we mentioned earlier, this Garfield thing, whatever it is, doing really, really, really low value letters for small claims court stuff, which frankly you could probably do on ChatGPT yourself if you wanted to, right, and get away with it. Very low legal risk on that, I would have thought. Don't quote me. I'm not a lawyer. Please don't. Please do not write to this website. But the key point is this: is that could you from scratch build a private equity backed? Actually, I probably wouldn't do private equity because I'm a little bit dubious about the intentions of private equity funds. But could you do a VC backed or a angel backed law firm from first principles, from scratch, with tons of technology? Yes, if you hired the right people, right? If some of the top funds lawyers in California, like the top people, the people who've got a book of business in the hundreds of millions, right? People who could just come and just their presence would shift the game, right? So I would start off with, so you've got this corporate tabula rasa, right? So you bring in your AI, all that kind of fancy stuff, right? But you need the people. And then, as you were saying, Ted, like great points about like bringing in much, much better HR, much, much better management, all these other faculties. And then could you throw money at it and like make it expand kind of rapidly? Yeah. But again, it comes down to people, doesn't it? I mean, if we're at the very, very bottom of the market, if we bifurcate out, we're at the very, very super, super low level, like doing like LegalZoom, right? Like a tiny company in Nebraska needs one employment contract for its one employee, right? It's a garage, right? They'll just jump on LegalZoom. It's low risk. There's no big deal there. But that's not going to change the game. If you're going to start to work with really important clients, it's going to be the people first, and the tech will come after to support it. And I think that is the stumbling block. And that is actually, this is the key point. This is why the Big Four never made an impact in legal. Because if the very, 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 very best deal lawyers from Clifford Chance, Linklaters, Slaughter and May, Freshfield, the creme de la creme, walked off en masse and had joined the Big Four, that would have changed the world. But they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't. They haven't yet. I agree with you on that. And, I think it was attributed to Gandhi, but I think it's
he was a fantastic lawyer.
Yeah.
Best private equity lawyer in the world. Joking, but
I was going to say this is some new trivia, but what he had a saying.
He was a lawyer. He was a lawyer.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I think his quote was, "First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win." Right? It's and I think that you're right. This is a lot like flying, and now that there's been a new innovation that enters into the equation, I think the outcome could be different, just like it was for the Wright brothers. So I do see this as a different era, and I just think there's going to be the way. If you look at, I know some people who do law firm strategy, quite a few actually, and they help lawyers basically create a differentiation strategy and a marketing communication strategy. And the maturity of law firms relative to other industries is low, and there's a lot of gap between where the current state and what is possible. And I think that's why we have the AmLaw 200 instead of the Big Four. It's a ton of boutiques that's driven largely by relationships, like you just mentioned, and the brand is the brand matters, right? Who's opposing counsel on this matter is going to influence whether or not I choose to settle, right? Uh, and that matters in the future. And again, this is to your point. I think what's going to happen is it's going to happen slowly, then suddenly. In other words, I think we're not going to see any, major shifts in the next 2 or 3 years, but 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, I feel like it's going to turn on a dime, because if the current trajectory of capabilities continue or even steepen, which is a lot of people are predicting, it's just going to open up new opportunities where lawyers aren't necessarily the best innovators. I did a post on this where I mapped out the 7 personality traits of lawyers as defined by Dr. Larry Richard, who wrote Lawyer Brain. And then I mapped that against the 5 traits of an innovator as defined by Mark Andreessen, who knows innovation. It's about a 50% match. So lawyers are risk averse. They're very past precedent focused, not on the future. They're not very resilient. They're very happy with the status quo. When you look at innovators, they're on the opposite ends of those spectrums. So combining lawyers and I'm not saying the lawyer perspective isn't important. It's necessary, but not sufficient in the innovation equation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't really agree. I think the best lawyers are actually into risk and actually are really, really good at innovation, but they're innovating through their contracts and through litigation strategies. There's a bunch of people sitting in an office in New York somewhere going, right, has this ever been tried before? And like, looks around the room. Nope, no one's ever done this before. Let's do it. Let's do it. This is,
that's the best lawyers.
And these are the people, whoever, creating the poison pill, right? Wachtell Lipton, right? That was a risk. That was a huge risk. It was an innovation. If that had gone wrong, it would have really damaged the firm's reputation. If the whole thing had just like collapsed and backfired, right? But it didn't. It was genius.
Are the best lawyers on the Innovation Council? Are the best lawyers sitting in the CINO seat? I'd argue no.
They don't care because they don't need to.
Exactly.
If you're brilliant, if you're a really super respected lawyer who's very creative, very brave, and you've got the mind to back it up, you don't
keep practicing. Yeah, keep practicing.
If you're making like $5 million a year, just
exactly.
Keep going.
Right. So why?
This is, I think, in a funny way, it's actually where we go back to then actually agreeing, which is it's the other 95% of the legal world that actually does have to worry, because the other 95% world is not Marty Lipton, right?
Right.
There's only so many people like that in any sector, whether it's engineering or physics or chemistry, right? Any profession. It's everybody else. And I think, and also some of those large firms, there's a whole bunch of partners who, as you say, are risk averse, who are just churning, that thing, just, the organ grinder thing. And I think that is, I think, where it is interesting, because if AI does get to the point, and this is what I keep pushing for, like, for example, I did a piece the other day, so, everyone's always moaning and groaning, going, this AI is not accurate enough. So, all right, I'm going to call your bluff. What happens if it really is perfect? Now, what are you going to do? Be careful what you wish for, because, right, so you got all these partners going, this AI is rubbish, and you go, okay, now it is 99.9% accurate. It is better than you on a good day.
Yeah.
For these routine tasks.
Right.
It's probably not going to create a new poison pill, but it will do that document management, that document review project in 5 minutes, and it will be better than your best senior associate by a long. In fact, it's so good you probably don't even need to check it. In fact, if you do check it, you're probably almost breaking bar rules, because you're actually adding additional time that's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Now we're a long, long, long way from that.
We are.
But if we did get to that point, then all these firms who are just turning the organ, they're in trouble.
I agree. I see a clear bifurcation in the market now. I see firms that are going all in and staffing with, rock star innovation teams. Sometimes they're buying companies like Cleary did with Springbok. I see those all-in firms, and then I see the ones that are playing it safe and maybe piloting, a 25-user Copilot POC, or maybe they're POCing Harvey or CoCounsel. It is a very clear bifurcation from where I sit, and I think the ones who are taking risks and thinking about this in R&D terms instead of just purely ROI are going to come out the other side as winners.
Well, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think there's going to be the elite firms who just ignore tech and probably will be fine. There'll be the elite firms, and you mentioned one already, who actually does bring in the tech. And then amongst everyone else, that's going to break down as well, because, and I guess with elite firms, we can include small firms as well, boutiques who are really top of their game, because you don't necessarily have to have 1,000 lawyers to be elite. You could be 10 lawyers, but the best in your niche as well. But broadly, and then that's going to split. So there'll be the firms who actually look in the mirror and accept and go, you know what, 70% of our work in 10 years, it's going to be AI-able. Right, we need to get on top of this, guys, and let's stop pretending. And then they'll be fine. They'll probably need to merge. They'll need to probably restructure internally and merge and get more volume, because they're going to become bigger engines. And then you're going to get the other ones who are just going to stick their head in the sand and just wait it out, and they'll keep ringing up their clients. I mean, it's like then you get the Innovator's Dilemma,
right?
Which is such a great book about the innovators of yesterday are certain that their clients love them, and they keep ringing up their clients, and their clients do love them. They can ring them up in the morning and go, "You're not going to use that other firm, are you?" No, we love you. And then one day they don't answer the phone.
Slowly, then suddenly.
They're playing golf.
Yeah.
And then you realize they're not playing golf, and they don't love you anymore, and they're gone. And it's too late, because you've been sitting on your hands for 10 years.
Exactly. I know you got to go, so we're going to cut this episode just a little bit short, but I want to give you an opportunity to tell people, how do they find out more about the Legal Innovators Conference?
Cool. Well, okay, go to artificiallawyer.com if you wish, or go directly to the website. The first event is in June in California, San Francisco, Legal Innovators California. If you've just gone to Google, type in Legal Innovators California, June, you will find the event. There's still some tickets available, and it's on the 11th and 12th. And we'd love to see you there. And
awesome.
Thanks, Ted.
Yeah, this is good. It's a good conversation as always. So maybe I haven't looked at the conference that closely, but we're going to take a look and see if it's a fit for what we do as well.
Yeah, I mean, come along. Yeah, we'd love to have you. Okay. We'd obviously, I'll redirect you to the people in charge of that side of things. Oh, yeah, actually worth people knowing that I don't actually run the event myself. I'm chairing the event, and I've inspired the event, and I help in terms of the content and so forth. But the actual organization of which is by the Cosmonauts the Cosmonauts conference company.
Okay. Well, good stuff. Hopefully we'll see you there. If not, I'm sure we'll see you at a legal conference real soon. And
I won't be going to any more conferences this aside from Legal Innovators. I won't be going to any more conferences this year, except probably Legal Geek probably in the autumn. I won't be coming over to the US except for Legal Innovators California and then New York.
Well, we will be there. We're dipping our toe into the UK market, and we're doing 3 conferences over there. One next week, which is the PwC TLTF. It's a small event. We're doing the Big Hand conference in London in June, and then we're doing Legal Geek. So
okay, cool.
We'll definitely see you at Legal Geek.
See you there. And at our conference too.
Yeah, we'll chat about it as soon as we stop recording here.
All right.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you for having me on the show again.
All right. Take care. Thanks for listening to Legal Innovation Spotlight. If you found value in this chat, hit the subscribe button to be notified when we release new episodes. We'd also really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate us and leave us a review wherever you're listening right now. Your feedback helps us provide you with top-notch content.